you've been following Holley on social media, at the beginning of the month, you saw one of the best April Fool's jokes that we've ever created. It's called the Sky-Ram, and it's based on our popular LS intake manifold, the High-Ram, which hot rodders know and love. This one is 3D printed and it's got 30-inch tall runners. It's ridiculous, it's goofy, and we brought it all the way to Westech and actually built it so Steve could test it.
Lucky me. It is ridiculous, but it's ridiculously cool. The fact that you guys can actually do something like this in engineering is actually what's really impressive to me. So it's really, I imagine they took some of the same dimensions that they had here and they entered that information into the printer and just made the runners a lot longer. So I think what we're going to end up doing is changing the RPM range and characteristics of the engine considerably. What we've got to compare it to is the High-Ram, which is a really popular Holley intake, and we've recently done some testing on that for an episode of Engine Masters, but now we get to test the Sky-Ram. So this is going to be just nothing but fun.
Well, if some is good, more is better. The longest intake runners that we've ever made, we'll see what it does.
Let's go see. So we're getting ready to go ahead and do our preliminary tests with the Holley High-Ram on it. What we've got this thing bolted on is an LQ9 from Engine Quest. I mean, it's literally a stock engine with a smaller comp cams hydraulic roller in it. We're using the Holley HP EFI to tune it with, which is honestly kind of a dream even for an old carburetor guy like me. We've already tuned it actually. We want to do something so you guys can see what's here and what to compare it to, so when we look at the High-Ram, then we can at least see how ridiculous this Sky-Ram really is. So I think it'll be fun. So the real question is where do you carry the stepladder in your car when you're going to a show?
So we just finished testing the Holley High-Ram and that worked great. As you can see, we've got the Sky-Ram bolted up and it's massive. It barely clears the dyno cell. And this is actually so big that when we 3D printed it, we had to do it in 2 sections, bond them together with a 1-inch steel all-thread section to hold it together so it didn't fall apart on the dyno. This thing is a crazy science project and it'd be really cool to see what it does for the power band.
Well, there you have it. The Sky-Ram actually performed surprisingly well. I mean, I think a guy could tune this with no problem and go drive the thing around. We actually had to extend the cable up to the throttle position sensor. We didn't bother with the idle air control simply because we were dyno testing, but there's no reason a guy couldn't run this. But some of the characteristics of it is that you notice here this big hump, which the question was, why is that hump there? And it's truly simply because of manifold design. That is where the highest VE number with this particular combination is occurring. That's where the most cylinder pressure is. That's where the most air is being induced into the cylinder. That's the curve in black compared to the curve in red, which is the High-Ram, which is a much softer kind of curve, but obviously a much higher RPM range. We were done at 5,000 RPM with this Sky-Ram, which I think we kind of anticipated that, honestly. You know, it really is. You can kind of almost go back to the early 60s and see long rams on Chrysler Max wedges that kind of use this same sort of theory and technology. The longer runner being typically better for low-end torque, and shorter runners typically being better for high-end torque. I think we just demonstrated kind of exactly what we had hoped and what we thought would happen, but it's still kind of unique. What I think the coolest thing is that odd hump there actually made 510 pound-feet of torque, and our peak number with the high ram was 458 pound-feet of torque, so it far exceeded the high ram in absolute output. But again, the maximum power work being done is going to be up here, and so it depends on your application. This Sky-Ram, if somebody would dare to actually try to run it, it would probably be good for a tractor or something that kind of, you needed power at 3,500 RPM. Otherwise, I think it might be nice to close your hood and stick with the high ram.
All right, well, we dyno tested it. It worked. It's pretty crazy. We live in a time where you can 3D print an intake manifold, ship it across the country to a dyno center and run it, and it makes power and torque. And it made 50 pound-feet over a high ram, which was pretty cool.
It absolutely is. I mean, kind of part of the thing is what we really looked at here was a demonstration in runner length. And the high ram is actually pretty long, but this is just, as you can see, ridiculous. We talked earlier about that hump that everyone had commented on.
Right.
And I can tell you that I really, with the Holley software, it makes it very easy. I was running it in open loop, so I was actually tuning it. But I made sure that it was within a tenth or so at every point in the RPM range. The timing was the same. It really was just isolated to the test on this. So it was pretty cool to see. I see a lot of intake manifolds and a lot of different designs, but it was really cool to see something so exaggerated that we were able to take a really good existing combination and find 50 pound-feet out of it.
So I mean, if you don't need your engine to rev super high and you want a ton of torque, this is how you do it. Don't forget that you can actually win the Sky-Ram. We're giving this exact intake manifold away. You can find that at holley.com/win. It even comes with the crazy moonshot massive nitrous plate system that we came up with last April Fool's. So enter to win it, and we even have a t-shirt that you can buy at holley.com.